So, Frank, floor is yours. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, as Evan mentioned, thanks for the nice introduction, Evan. My name is Frank Catania. I just started studying for the GMAT back in, I believe it was May 2020, April 2020, just around when the COVID and the whole pandemic started getting pretty aggressive and lockdown put us in a predicament. My very close family friend at the time, David Principe, is a genius doctor in New Jersey who has a very big influence on my life and my studies, really got under me and said, listen, Frank, if you want to take this MBA route seriously, now is the time. I had an internship set up for Oppenheimer Investment Bank in New York City in their equity research department. And unfortunately, that was canceled due to COVID, completely no online, nothing. So I said to myself, all right, you know what? I'm going to take this very seriously. I was very excited for my internship. I love valuation, but I decided to take a different route. I decided to study for the GMAT all summer. Coming out of high school, solid student, but nothing great, mediocre. Didn't take the SAT as seriously as I thought I had, and I was definitely in a sense, I guess, intellectually just not as secure as I wanted to be because I loved finance so much. I learned so much about it. I put in the time to learn extra and do everything outside of the classroom, but my issue ended up being was that just earlier on in high school, I could have performed better to get into a top college and have a better route into one of the investment banks. So I, pony up, start taking my practice tests. I take my first practice test. I remember I got together with a tutor. He said, take a practice test. And I ended up pulling a 420 on the practice test. And that was the beginning of my journey. That day was the beginning of my journey at the end of April. And that broke my heart to see that, right? You want to take this test. You have this vision of getting into a top school. Somewhere that'll fit me really well and fit my career nicely, and somewhere that I'll really be able to go on the rest of my life and to be a part of me. I had this whole vision in my mind. And in that moment, watching that 420 pop up on the screen and how much I struggled during my practice test, everything came back from high school. Everything came back immediately and it flooded. And I just started thinking to myself, this is how I felt on the SAT. Maybe I'm just not built out for this. Maybe I'm just not built out for one of these top places, top programs. And the insecurity really set in. So I remember I hop in my car, I would go home. I was studying at Dr. Principe's house. And I'm just sitting in my driveway and thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I want this so bad. I want to get into a top program so bad and start my career and, ultimately compete in one of the best areas in finance at one of the top institutions. And I shed a tear in that moment. I was very upset, right? I remember thinking, what I just took on that practice test, I don't know if I can handle this. And I just made a decision in that moment that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this happens. So I immediately ordered Manhattan, not the series, because I ordered that later on, which was spectacular. I'll get into that, the Manhattan Red Book series. But I ordered Manhattan verbal review, quant review, foundations of quant, foundations of verbal. And the very next day, just start going into it. My first day was about 8 hours. And then my second day was about 8 hours. And I just started going every day. The next day is 10 hours. Next day is 12 hours. And it was my life. I would wake up in the morning. I would study nonstop to the nighttime. And my family starts noticing and they start mentioning it. And I remember Dr. Principe says to me, he's like, I'll be impressed when he does that for 2 months, 3 months. This is how you have to be to ace these tests. Because you don't get to go to a top graduate school or a top program and not give your all to this test. It's just not what it is. You don't get to basically make those salaries and be part of that type of learning environment without sacrificing as much as you have to. For the people, some people I see on the forum are just naturally genius. They see the problems, it comes to them, they blow through it. And I think their journey was a little bit easier than others. So I'll start to get into the specifics of how I studied now and my advice to everybody from the start of my journey. So first thing I started doing, went through the Manhattan series of just the verbal review, quant review, foundation of the quant, and went through there. Just stay positive. It was so frustrating. So anybody that's looking and listening to me right now, it's going to be so frustrating. I remember looking at some problems, just having no idea how I will ever no matter how long I study, see the solutions that these women and gentlemen have in the form and be able to replicate that. How do they come up with that fast route? How do they get that done? So I just kept working at it. And I would get this high every time I would do a problem I would get let's say a correct problem on quant correct. That was even a 600 level. And I would get so excited. One step closer. That's a question I would have never gotten 2 weeks ago. One step closer. And again, every day for the summer, I would go down the shore for the weekends with my friends, which is in South Jersey. I was studying. I was at the table studying. We would go out somewhere. I got the question of the day done. So from April to August of 2020, completely dedicated to the GMAT. Throughout the summer, constant repetition of problems in the OG guide. Don't write in your guides. That's advice from me as well. Try not to write in your guides. Make sure that you keep your guides blank so you can go back. Keep a log. Make sure you're coming down on timing. I was so concerned about just getting the fundamentals of the problems correct. I wasn't focusing on, as say, timing and strategy as much as I should have. And you'll see why I pay for that later on. I pay a very big price for that later on. So what ends up happening is I study for the rest of the summer. And then books that changed my whole entire quant mindset was the Manhattan Red Book series with Number Properties. Spectacular book. I recommend it to everybody. Basically allowed me to master probability, all those extra stuff. You'll see a few problems in there. So I studied for the rest of the summer. I ended up taking the test August 19th in 2020. And this is what I will tell you. I was not taking my practice tests 1 and 2, under realistic conditions. I was more concerned about getting the problems correct than timing and how fast I was doing timing and the way I was doing the problems. So not taking the test under realistic conditions, a practice test, I'm scoring maybe a 700, a 710, a 720, but never feeling fulfilled because I know at the end of the day, that was not under realistic conditions. I was not going through the whole test the way I should have. If something was that difficult, I knew I could get it, I paused the test. So it's a kiss of death in June. It's not your practice tests you need to truly measure yourself. And I was just so afraid that I was going to take this practice test and look at the past 3 months I had dedicated to this test and see, something pop up very similar to my original score. I just couldn't handle that. Naturally, I was pretty solid with verbal, studied often, went hard on sentence correction, went extremely hard on reading comprehension. And critical reasoning, I'm very fortunate, was something that came to me naturally. My first test, I had like a 91st percentile on critical reasoning. So August 19th, I take the test. I go into the test center. Very nervous the day before, which is my first issue. My second issue is I'm taking the test under conditions, which is it was early in the morning. It was about 8:30. I usually started studying around that time, but I was never in my prime at 8:30. So I get in the test center. They make me wear a mask. They put a mask on my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this. I never practiced with a mask on. I had a heavy cloth mask on. I start taking the test, the quant section. The first problem, I have no idea. And I spend 4 minutes on it. Next problem, I know how to do it, but I spend 3 minutes on it. Next thing you know, I'm in the hole. Get down to my last 7 problems, and I just completely have to guess on all of them, which is that's going to destroy your quant score. Very disappointed at that point. I just studied all these months for this test, and I cannot believe what had just happened. I was not expecting for this to go this way. I had idealized getting a 700 and being so excited, and I built this test up to be this great thing that I have to tackle in order to motivate me to study. So I go into the bathroom. I remember just staring in the mirror, taking a few deep breaths to take my break, my 8-minute break, just saying, all right, your verbal section's your last shot left. You got to pick yourself up. You have to be solid on verbal. You have to save yourself. So I go in there on verbal, and I started performing well on verbal. I started going through the motions. I could feel myself hitting some harder problems. There's this feeling you get when you're looking at a very difficult problem and you know what you're looking for and you see the answer choice. You're like, that's it. So I felt that a lot throughout the test, and ended up going on, finished that section, took IR, AWA, submit it. I see a 650 pop up. And my emotions were bittersweet in this sense that I just guessed on my last 7 on quant and still pulled a 650. I guessed on my last 3 on verbal. I didn't finish on time, still pulled a 650. And, the margin for error in verbal is much smaller. So I was like, all right, a 650 rough, but it started hitting me. I get in the car. I studied all these months. I cannot believe I just blew the test. I could not believe that I just sat in that testing room and now I have to tell my family and friends what had just happened. How are they going to feel when they know that I had studied all these months? But I had a nice score increase from obviously 420 to 650. So get home, I tell everybody what had happened, and people feel for me. It's upsetting, and I remember I was very upset at the time. But I had to keep my head up, and another decision-making process right in that moment, sitting in this room, just looking out the window. I remember, what do you want to do here? Are you going to give up on what you put in so much time, or are you going to keep going? Are you just going to keep going? You're not going to let this stop you. And I decided I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to give up. This is what I want. I put this much work into it. I'm going to keep studying for this test. I'm not going to stop. So I started studying for a little bit after, got an internship on Wall Street at a brokerage for a few months and had taken a hiatus because I was so busy with the technical work I was doing in that area. But I never once let myself forget about the GMAT. Every day I was right on Wall Street outside the exchange. First thing I would look at when I've looked at the exchange, always reminded myself how important that test was. Started studying for my Series 7, took a brief break from the GMAT, but always did the questions of the day. That was a routine for me. I would always do the question of the day, just keep myself basically contained, getting the right thing done, making it happen. And keeping it going. You don't want to lose that skill. So then it comes time again, I get hired at my full-time job, which was fantastic, such a blessing. And this summer I start going back at it. I pick up the old books, dust them off, and I started going right back at it full time. But now I'm working full time, so I would work throughout the day, let's say 8 to 10 hours, and then I would go from, let's say 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. studying for the GMAT. And then I would do that every single day while working my full-time job, making sure I have to perform there because that's my first priority. And I started feeling much more comfortable. It wasn't starting from the bottom this time. It was, I knew how to start this. I knew the forum. I knew Bunel's solutions. I knew people, and I was more comfortable with it. I respected it. I just really was back in a position where I'm like, I can go at this. So I kept studying nonstop. I went right back at it, trying to get as much time as I could. And it felt different this time. It felt like I was a veteran with this test. I knew this test. And there was one thing I want to mention real quick, but just before I finish up to my last test day, is that this is a journey. It is not, do not start studying for this test and think to yourself, all right, I'm going to study from this time to this time and finish it and I'll be done. It's good to think that way and plan that way, but this is a journey. It's meant to be a journey, and you need to make the GMAT a part of your life. It has to become a part of your life. And not because you have to love quantitative reasoning and verbally reasoning, but because if you want to get into that top graduate school, if you want that score, it's going to have to become a part of your life, and the people around you are going to have to accept that. And that was a big thing in my life, was the toll that the GMAT took on some of my relationships. I had become so obsessed with the test that had frustrated some people around me, my family, friends, my romantic relationships. And they were there. That I owe it to them so much, because those people were there for me the whole entire time. They listened to me talk about the GMAT for hours. At the end of the day, how much do they care about the GMAT? And they were there for me the whole time. So I had a great support group around me. So moving forward, I feel much more comfortable. Now I take my GMAT tests, practice tests 4, 5, and 6 under realistic conditions. 4, I pull a 670. With my verbal was a 40 or 42. I think it was a 42. And my quant was I think a 42 as well. I go through I'm panicking. I just studied. I felt so strong what just happened. And I go look at I made the most just simple mistakes, things that if I was just paying attention better, simple mistakes. So I didn't panic. I really wasn't that panicked. I said, you know what? I just scored a 42 in quant. I got some really easy questions wrong because I just wasn't paying attention. I know how to do them all day. And I'm like, all right, let's move on from this. So I move on. I go take my next practice test, and I score a 44 in quant and I believe a 40 in verbal. So I hit a 710, natural conditions. I feel nice. But I go look back at the problems. That was a stupid mistake. That was a stupid mistake. And I started really thinking, maybe this has something to do with, I had just finished working for the day. My brain was clouded. Maybe this has something to do with that. So I don't really have much time where I'm not doing stuff for work. So I take my next practice test on Saturday, that following Saturday, and I score another 710 with a quant 50. And my verbal's a 37. So instead of looking at it from a negative aspect and saying, all right, 2 710s, I'm like, all right, I just scored extremely high in quant and extremely high in verbal with let's say a 42 and a 50. So I'll take the test in 2 weeks. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to take the test on Tuesday, which was Saturday. I took the test. Tuesday was the test date. I said, I'm going to take the test this Tuesday. Schedule it, get ready. My boss was kind enough to allow me to take part of that day to just relax, study for the GMAT. Hop in the testing room. I'm more relaxed. I'm not listening on the way to the GMAT test center. I'm listening to more relaxing music. I'm not getting all riled up about this test. This is my life. I've been doing this for years now. This is just what I do. And that's what I'm thinking on the way. I've been doing it for how long? I see the people in the forum, Daniel Cummings' story, all these different, resilient stories. There's no reason I can't do that. I'm one of those people. I had to put in the amount of hours and the amount I started studying from the day I started studying to when I took my test of anybody. There's not many people that could have put in that much amount of work on the GMAT unless you're a full-time tutor. There's just I dedicated everything to it. I'd be at the dinner table and I'd have an itch to do a problem. I'd go to the bathroom, whip out my phone and pull out, see what was it like. And I'd go in my email, I'd type in GMAT Club and look for the questions of the day. And I'd go do 2 problems in the bathroom really quick and come back to the dinner table. And I had such an urge to just do as many problems as I could, as accurately as I could, and as quick as I could. So I step in the testing center. The woman was very kind. I liked it much better than my original experience. The people were kind of aggressive, and that made me nervous as well. But I step in the testing center. The woman was very kind. She says, I hope you do great today. I hope you get a 700 plus. And that made me feel well. And there was another person taking it there, and it was great being around someone else who was taking it. And I was so nervous before the test. I remember just sitting down as soon as that blue screen popped up. It was just another practice session. First question comes up. It's a classic, 3 variable, 3 equation question. I blow it. It was fractional. I didn't have the time. I started getting caught up. I should have plugged in rather than trying to solve for the variables. Easier problem, I would say, had to be a 500 to 600 level, maybe low 6s. And I blew the first problem, kept my mind intact. Rest of the test, I barely remember. Just completely autopilot. Years of studying just came together in one session. Absolutely just blowing through problems. The quant section seemed pretty easy. No issues. The verbal section, again, I couldn't really even think of one problem I got wrong in the verbal section. Can't even remember it. Just went through the whole entire test, and I remember thinking, well, if this doesn't pop up a 700 plus, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I feel like I just did very well in this test. I don't feel like I absolutely stellar, especially after that first question that I missed in quant. But I said, if I don't get a solid score here, I don't really know what's going to happen. So run through everything, end up submitting the test, and just pops up a 730. I could not even believe my eyes. Could not even believe my eyes from what I saw. And it was just 2 years of work. And I realized, really anything you put your mind to, and it's not just me, anybody on this forum, anything you put your mind to on this test, if you really, truly want it, you're willing to dedicate the time to it. And rather than the weekend on going out or enjoying your free time, you have to make your free time the GMAT. That when you get a second to study for the GMAT, when you get a few hours, that's a privilege. And that time to study, that's not a job. That's not a burden on you. You should feel privileged to be able to take this test, score the way you need to score, and go to a top school, create an amazing career for yourself, and go from there. So that's my story in a nutshell. Feel free to ask me anything, study materials, how I feel about the algorithm, literally anything.
Wow. All right. lot to unpack there. By the way, I was taking notes this whole time. That was not me like looking down at my phone. That was me trying to take notes.
Thanks. Thank you for listening and let me go through it. Really, you're a great host for that, because I know I babble on, but
I appreciate that. Again, we here at GMAT Club, we have no agenda. We're here to have you guys help each other and create a community. Just like we have no agenda with anyone who's a quote unquote sponsor of the forum, or any company that isn't a sponsor of the forum. You can trash or talk up any company you want. This is your time. I do want to recap a couple of things, have some follow-up questions, and then to those of you who are watching who do want to ask Frank questions, please submit them. I'll get to them at the end. I promise you we'll cover them at some point. But Frank, you've had a lot of people say stuff essentially like this, that you've been very motivational, that you've kept them going, that you've made them understand that they're not suffering from something that's unique to them, that people have experienced it, and that you have pushed through just as they can. So that's what we want to see here. So let's see. First thing I noted, you talked about the doctor next door who was the supporter who was able to get you to sort of focus on the test to begin with. You mentioned you used GMAT. You mentioned you studied hard. If I can follow up on that really fast, how many hours would you say you put in total over the 2 years?
Well, about 1.5 years. I would say I had to put in. I did the math and I kind of kept track. I mean, over 2,000 hours.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
all right, so
I over 2,000 hours. I mean, it was really. There were some points where I even thought I was getting too obsessed with the test, and it was getting, it was like just I couldn't stop thinking about it.
So keeping that in perspective here, the average full-time job is going to come in at about 2,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
So you were basically doing a full-time job studying for this.
Oh, 100%.
And that cannot be understated. It can't be undersold here. You had to make the GMAT your actual full-time job to a certain extent while trying to balance a full-time job to ensure you got the score that you needed.
Yeah. And I would say, I would also like to mention that a bulk of that 2,000 hours was before my full-time job. I mean, I had a summer where I just had a free summer. I mean, and so that was when I was basically doing 2 full-time jobs.
No, don't take away from the pedestal here. Like I'm trying to haul you up here.
I thank you.
But I also heard the first time you took it, it doesn't sound like you had prepared using your mocks, in the sense that like preparing for a test, that you hadn't put yourself in the proper mindset. So when you went in for your first test, the mindset was, this is a test. This isn't just another day in the neighborhood. This isn't the good chip lollipop. This is something different. It sounds like it wasn't ideal conditions for your testing, especially because you mentioned the time of day being early. It sounds like you're a night person.
Yeah.
Which is also something to consider if you're taking the test and you're studying. Take your mocks to either benchmark yourself to understand your progress, and I do want to follow up with you on that. But in addition to benchmarking, take the mock test and understand the mindset that you need to be in. So that way, when you do take it on test day, it's just like another day in the park. So that was incredibly smart of you to get yourself in that mindset. You mentioned the score increase. I have to imagine that helped you continue to push through sort of the walls and the barriers in your mind.
100%.
You talked about motivating yourself for your career. I assume you want to be paid well at some point. You want a nice home. You want a nice life.
Of course.
I assume the score increases helped you continue to push through those walls.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I really want to mention real quick, GMAT Club is basically a charitable organization. What you guys do, it's just unbelievable. Without you, it just wouldn't have happened. First of all, I just want to mention that. You're one of the most generous, the way you just allow people to have access to free information. I just want to say that real quick is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen a website do. I mean, I've spent the majority of my time on GMAT Club these past 2 years.
I love it.
So I want to thank you guys for that. You're amazing in that sense. But
We appreciate it.
and the question was, I'm sorry, was
Oh,
you you were saying something about what was it? The way I study for the mocks?
well, I was mentioning, yeah. So timing of day. It sounded like when you were initially studying, it was different than sort of your later times where once you started your full-time job and you started to go from the 650 to 700 plus, you were studying at night. And I have to assume that in that time period, so when did you take your 7:30 uh, exam? Was that in the morning or was that more towards
That
the
was 4
afternoon or
p.m.
evening?
4 p.m. Perfect timing.
There we go. Which is something that, again, needs to be highlighted. If you're a morning person, study in the morning, take your mock test in the morning, and take the test in the morning. If you're a night person, do the same thing. Do not reinvent the wheel. Do not try and be something you're not. It sounds like, Frank, you discovered that.
Yeah, this is a nasty test, and you have to realize why it's created. It's created for people's logical reasoning. You have to be in the sharpest mindset possible. You have to be the best version of yourself showing up to that test.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have room to show up hungry, all right, and you have an empty stomach taking the test. You don't have room to show up tired. I mean, you need to be in your sharpest time frame. And if they have you have to wait another week. I would say at 8:30 a.m. I would wait another week for that 4 p.m. because that is important.
Couldn't agree more. I also want to hit on your family. You talked about your family. You talked about your friends. You talked about your, was it a girlfriend or a boyfriend? It was romantic.
Girlfriend, yeah,
All right,
girlfriend.
didn't want to assume. Sorry.
That's all right.
Didn't
No, I
want to
respect
assume
that.
here.
I respect that.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you're a handsome guy, and frankly, I'm getting really pissed off at BB, Bunel, Naren, who's ever scheduling these things. I want guys less attractive than me. I'm getting sick of this.
Evan,
I'm playing second fiddle every week. I do
you're a
these
handsome guy, my
things.
friend.
Jesus. But anyways, you know what? Give the viewers what they want, which apparently isn't me. But
No, people love
family,
it.
family
I knew of
support.
you, by the way. I've seen you on the forums.
Oh, I appreciate that. Family support, friendship is so critically important. It's often overlooked, just as everything that we've talked about here. To have a family support you, to prop you up when you're having those down days, to have a friend or a girlfriend know that you're working as hard as you can and that them maybe reacting a certain way doesn't help you, just to have them there for you can be the difference between getting to that 730 and not seeing 700.
Yeah,
I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about how they were able to
of
really
course. I would
solidify
love
you
to.
and help you get there?
I would love to. I did not think I was. There was never a moment in my mind where I said, and I hope you all take this as motivation as well, where I said to myself, I'm going to get a 700 plus. There was never a moment I said that to myself where I lived in the constant state of insecurity of will I be able to crack this thing? Will I be able to get a 700 plus? Constant state of insecurity. So I don't want any of you thinking that if you feel when you go take this test, oh, it's I'm not prepared for it, or like the guys who score the 700s, they know. I had no idea. I just put my best foot forward. My family and friends, including Doug, Alexa, my mom, David, my dad, my sister, Mahmood. These are people that really, and Zach, of course, these people really just pushed me. Like they gave me the motivation. They gave me credit for the way that I was studying. They said, Frank, the way you're studying is amazing. You're driven. You're going to make this happen. And I remember speaking to my girlfriend, Alexa, and
Hi, Alexa.
yeah, speaking to Alexa, and she said to me, she's like, I said, Alexa, like, I really wonder if I'm getting a 700 plus. She rolls her eyes. She's like, first of all, you better get a 700 plus because we've missed how many dates because you've been studying. She goes, second of all, she's like, she told me, she's like, in a way, she said to me, that's not the way life works. Like, you don't work like this for something. You don't go as fast as I see you going on these problems when you do them and not pull this off. It's going to happen. And that put a little more pressure on me. Like, what if it doesn't? It did. It worked out. So these people were everything. And Dr. Principe was another massive motivation. He had a story of when he had first taken one of his medical exams. He's an OBGYN surgeon, Yale educated, extremely smart. Smart guy. He told me the first time he took an exam, he didn't take it seriously. He blew it. He locked himself in a room for 6 months, studied every single day, no job, nothing, just studied for that test. And he pulled it off. And he didn't have the support group I had. He did not have that support group I had. He had to do things on his own. And I remember hearing that story. He said, you're going to knock it, the way you're studying, you're going to knock it out of the park. You're going to knock it out of the park. Him too. I mean, he was there with me every step of the way. When I called him, he was the first person I called about that 650. And I remember I had tears and just so upset speaking to me. He said, that's fine. You pony up, you do it again. That's life. He goes, that's life. That's what he's like. You're going to learn in life. That's what happens. You work hard for things, you get slapped in the face. That's what happens. Life's not fair. He goes, you go back and do it again.
Damn, we need to get that guy in the forum. Like,
yeah, right. So if everybody had a Dr. David in the forum, I mean, we'd have all 700 plusers.
Jeez. Oh, what a great guy. I hope he's watching. Yeah. I hope Alexa's watching. Because kudos to both of you and to your family as well, Frank, for helping you through that. You've mentioned how you were studying, and I want to dive into a little more detail with that. So the first question I have is, you talked about using Manhattan GMAT, so MGMAT. Did you use them exclusively for study materials?
I was very strict on the OG guide to start. OG is everything. There's the OG guides for me is I took them for granted at the beginning. Writing the book, running through problems. They are very special problems. The GMAT spends a lot of money on each problem. I think it's $3,000 to $5,000 each problem.
It is. You are correct.
Right? You really have to make sure that you cherish those problems, and before you start running through problems in the medium and hard sections of the OG guide, you should have foundations laid, because you do not want to waste them, and you want to take them under natural conditions. You don't want to look at the problem and say, well, I know how to do this problem, but I know the answer is 36 because remember last time I did it and I got it wrong. I remember. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you take this, you lay your foundation first, so you can take the medium and hard problems in the OG guide fresh. I'm actually taking the test again.
Why?
So I'm taking the test again because the AWA section, I had the original page, and I'll explain more about this later because I want to finish the study materials I use because that's important. I thought they were giving me the original page. And that's another thing. I did not do my AWAs on my practice test, and I paid for it again, because even all the way to the end, which I know most people don't do. So the first page they gave me, I thought they were saying, and the directions at the bottom of the page on the next page is where you're writing. So I thought the first page was for my, to create basically a rough draft, and the next page I would write it. So I had a very poor AWA section, and go to the next page, pops up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just submitted my AWA. So I'm actually okay with it because, again, I've studied for how many years, and I love the test. So I'm just going to take it again. If it doesn't work out, I'll have to write a separate essay about it and, work on that a little bit. That's fine. I'm not really that stressed about it. The 730's there. Can't take that from me, and that's what I worked for.
No, sir.
So back to sort of getting away here. Let me grab I just want to grab the book real quick to show.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick.
Okay, so while Frank is away, which tends to happen every now and again with our users, I want to say Chinese Burned. He is a user. I actually think the account's been deactivated, unfortunately, but Chinese Burned, it has an AWA guide. We've posted it in other videos. If you look up Chinese Burned, no spaces, on the forum, you'll see his guide, his AWA guide. I would highly recommend it. It's the most liked forum post we've ever had. So please check that out.
Wow. Thank you. I will take a look at that. I'm going to go in and try to score a 6 on the AWA because I love writing.
Read his, I believe it's a he. Read his guide.
I will. Thank you.
No worries.
The Manhattan GMATs here, these are this series right here, Guide 7, 1 through, you'll see on top at 0 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
These are the books you should really focus on. Dig through them. There's 2 layers to them. There's 1 layer the first time you read through them, and a layer the second time you read through them. So I would suggest that you really dive into those books because I think number properties probably brought my quant score up by 5 points. I'm not even kidding. Yeah. It literally, that book just clicked with me. So I
That's
would
awesome.
suggest those. And as for an error log, could have been a lot more diligent. I strong armed it. I could have been a lot more efficient in my studying process. I strong armed everything. Okay, you know, I'm just going to do 100 problems today. I'm going to do 200 problems today. And I just run through those 200 problems. And I would obviously study what I got wrong and see what I got wrong and fix it. But I wasn't very efficient in keeping track of the problems I got wrong. I would suggest everybody does that. Because each problem, really, it's just looking at the problem saying, like, I remember I got a max min problem on the test. And I know how to do max min problems, which is however many variables there are, is minimizing every other variable, maximizing the variable you're trying to find, and just or minimizing every other variable, setting the last variable to X, and then solving. That's the most important part there. And so just keep doing that, going through the process, writing everything down, keep track of your errors. But the guides, strategy guide series, along with OG guides and Manhattan tests.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their views. That quant section is not normal. That is not that. My opinion, the quant section on Manhattan is not normal. But
It
Manhattan's
is harder.
yeah,
It is harder.
that is a harder section. So if you're polling, I polled consistent 42, 43s on Manhattan quant, and on my practice tests, even my normal test, I would more in the range of like, I would say 47 to 50. So, but they're great tests. Make sure you take them. I would recommend taking them. It's the second best test there are. And even if you're getting pummeled on the quant section, do not get discouraged. Finish that quant section the right way and finish. Just finish it off, get it done, and do the right thing. Even if you get a 42, 43, that pressure that Manhattan quant section puts on you is a gift in itself, because that taught me to let things go, let problems go. You have to accept this test is not made for you to get a perfect score. It's not made for you in the quant section to even get, 2 or 3 wrong. You're going to get a lot wrong. You have to learn to move on. That is important as well.
All right, I do actually want to follow up how you learn to move on, but I want to just clarify a couple more things on test material or study material, shall we say. So you used MGMAT, you used the OG guides.
Yep.
So it sounds like you probably used MGMAT and OG questions from the forum as well, at least for quant. Did you use any other sources? But for verbal, on top of that, did you stick to MGMAT and OG, or did you maybe branch out a little bit beyond those?
Honestly, verbal was just OG, because there was a kid that came on, brilliant kid. He changed my whole entire verbal mindset. His name is Colton from Alabama. Scored a 780, perfect score in the verbal section. He did an interview with GMAT Ninja. He's about the same age as me, very similar story, very similar background. He specifically said LSAT and stick to OG. You have to be very careful when it comes to verbal. My opinion, when it comes to verbal, stick to your OG questions. Watch the way you use them. If you get something wrong, look at 10 variations of that. It's okay to look at the solutions to problems that are not official, but I wouldn't beat yourself up in trying to do streaks. That's another thing I would do, is streaks. Daniel Cummings taught me. But don't beat yourself up on trying to do streaks on non-official problems, because I've seen a few problems where it could very easily be disputed.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. With verbal, stick to OG and use LSAT. I'm a huge proponent of using the LSAT because I think they're terrific. But outside those two, stay away from everything else.
Yes, 100%.
Especially sentence correction, because nobody comes anywhere near what GMAT has put together for sentence correction, which just shows you the level of care that they put into these questions.
Yes. That's one more thing I need to mention to everybody. My verbal, I scored a 45, 99th percentile, and I was 90 across the board in all subsections on my verbal. I think it was 95th percentile on sentence correction, around there. I will emphasize this to the nth degree. You do not have to know, specific gerunds and this and that and the. You should know the foundations of American grammar, but you do not have to be a grammar expert. Half of these problems are meaning, parallelism, singular, plural agreement with the subject. And it's really just meaning. Like when you look at a problem, a parallelism problem, and you would need to determine through logic what you think in that sentence is going to be parallel. That is not a grammar test from GMAT, in my opinion. GMAT did not create that that is logic. You need to use, of course, your skills in grammar to logically determine how that sentence should be structured. And it's a logic game. It really is a logic game more than it is grammar. And I know a lot of non-native speakers really struggle and put so much time into learning, like what this crazy terminology in American grammar. If you ask me specific things about, I know the basics of independent clause, dependent clause, but if you really got into it with me about grammar, I just know how to write properly. I don't know the actual terms and how to pick apart a sentence grammatically, but I know how to do it on the GMAT. There's two different things, and I just want people not to get caught up doing that. Like, God rest his soul, Dog, right? Daagh.
Yep, dog.
Yeah, Dog has extremely. He's guy's genius and has contributed so much to the forum. Thank God for him. But he definitely has very structured solutions. I would of course, take them seriously because he says some amazing things, especially when he goes in the logic realm. But his stuff is pretty hardcore. So a lot of times, like I would read his stuff and the way he had things structured out. He was so specific with this structure and this structure. Sometimes he overwhelmed me with his solutions, and I can only imagine how that would be for a non-native speaker.
Great advice. Great advice across the board. I want to ask, how did you break up? How many questions a day would you say you studied once you understood that you need to build your fundamentals and foundation first and then move on to the more difficult questions? So getting easy right and then getting medium and hard ones right thereafter. How many questions a day were you doing quant? How many verbal? How were you breaking those up? What time were you committing to it? Were you reviewing these consistently once you did them? What was that like?
So I would say I was pretty sloppy with the way I would break things up, and sloppy in the sense I wasn't structured with like, all right, I was very jumping. All right, I feel good. I nailed that quant for a while. I'm pretty consistent on my 70%. That's another thing. Don't go picking up 50% correct problems on GMAT and quant and have to streak them for 10 in a row. So don't worry about that. I mean, that's great that if you want to shoot for 50, 51, but for somebody just trying to keep that 46, 47, 48 area, I mean, really just make sure you get all those 65, 60 to 75 to 80. Of course, anything above 80 to 100, of course, you'll get some wrong. You should be a 90% correct on those. But anything in that medium section, get as many of those correct as you can. You should master those problems. Don't spend time on trying to figure out the extremely complex solution to a problem you'll never see. That's one thing I've learned there. So splitting them up, I would do quant and then subsection of verbal. I would do quant problem solving, quant data sufficiency, half and half. And I would go run over the verbal, and I spend 3 days on reading comprehension. I would spend 2 weeks on sentence correction. I would go weeks at a time. And if you take a hiatus from studying, when you go back to studying again, make sure you focus on what you're weak on, because that is your most powerful moment. I never learned more than I learned than when I started studying again in the summer after taking that, little bit of a hiatus, and of course still studying, but when I really jump back into it, that's when you soak everything up because you had so much time off. So yeah,
excellent advice.
Answer is as needed. I switched over to problems as needed. When I felt I was comfortable on a solution, I said I could step away. But it's a balance beam, because I would spend so much time on verbal, I'd hop over to quant and I'd start getting some wrong. Again, you have to make it a part of your life to the point where, you could see your mother from or father from a room across a room in a mall, right? And you know that's their face, you know that's their body, you know what they look like, and like no matter what, a year could go by, you'll remember how to do that, and that's how you should be with these problems. You should recognize them like they're your family, like it's that extreme. You have to make sure you recognize these problems, you see them, and you get it done.
Wow. All right. So now we're going to jump over to the questions that people have been asking. My internet seems a little bit off. So if I keep freezing, I don't know, Frank, do I keep freezing on your end?
Actually, I haven't, not at all. You've been perfectly smooth.
Wow. All right. Good for me. So if I do freeze, I apologize. But let's see. Somebody said, hi, Evan. Yep. I'm going to say hi to you and call you out because that's what happens when you're nice to people on camera. Here's a question from Cicada. Hi, this is truly inspiring, but I had a quick question. How do I get an indication of my progress considering my scores sometimes tend to change drastically with each mock exam?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I commend you for even being that self-aware to know that that's happening with those adjustments and those swings. So your issue would be your problem is you're clearly stronger in some subsections of quant, and you need to start focusing exactly what areas you're weak in. So I would say that let's say you have an issue with you're very good with fractions, but let's just say this mock test there was a very large number of overlapping set problems, and you can't do even an easy version of an overlapping set, or you struggle on mediums. You need to spend some time away from the mock tests because they're very valuable, and you need to spend a week or two on overlapping sets. That's what I did, and I never saw another overlapping set problem I had an issue with. So that's my suggestion there. You're probably strong in some areas of verbal and quant, but you need to start diving into your subsections of exactly where you're weak. That is my best suggestion to you. And great job being
All
self-aware.
right, and I guess the same would apply to this question. How to improve in verbal, which is a general question, and he's asking for a few quick tips. I think you talked about sentence correction being logic driven, not necessarily
Yes.
rule driven necessarily. I mean, do you have any quick tips around RC and CR, or would it just be go to MGMAT's books and read those?
So it's depending on a native speaker and a non-native speaker, because I'm not going to say that, I understand the struggle. I think these non-native speakers that come in and take this test in the verbal section is so inspiring that they take on that challenge. I really do, because I can't imagine. I mean, I'm a native speaker. I'm from America. I speak this language every day, and I struggle with some of these problems. So I can't even imagine what some of these people go through. So my best advice would be start looking at problems from a sense of look at the treats that GMAT is dangling you and look at the traps. Start recognizing when you read the problem that there's going to be a solution, whatever you think is a solution, right? So I see traps sometimes. I'll go through the problem. I'll run through. I always read what the question is first, read the problem, and then I go through the rest of them, rest of the the answers. And I see one that jumps at me. And before I click it, I'm like, read it. Wait a second. That's a strengthen. They're looking for a weaken. They just baited me. So the GMAT tries to set you up. It could be your friend a lot of times. It'll give
Yes,
you
they do.
dangled treats in front of your face, but it'll also set you up very hard. Make sure you're solid on the easy questions. GMAT will punish you if you get easy questions wrong consistently.
That is 100% true, and I like to think of GMAT questions with the answers similar to the LSAT in that they want you to look sort of over here. Like they want you to look over here. Like look at this finger, look at my finger. They don't want you to see what's going on way over here off the screen because that's where you need to look. They are constantly in any standardized test trying to make you look at something you're not supposed to look at. So please keep that in mind.
Great point, Evan. Great point.
This question we hit on a little bit, but maybe we can get in a little more detail. How did you discipline yourself every day to study, and what was the motivation to get online and put in that effort? Because again, you did it for 2 years.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I see it looks like whoever that is may maybe serve for the United States, some type of military branch. Thank you for your service. I think that'll translate over a lot to your training. Will translate over a lot to the discipline you need for the test. But this is my answer, and I have a very clear answer for that because a lot of people around me ask me. you need to visualize this test as a portal or a key to the future life you want for your family, and how you want to be known. So this test will unlock for you some opportunities that, let's say you come from a family that maybe most people aren't educated, and you can literally change the bloodline of your family through this test. You need to make sure that you blow this thing up so big that if you get that score, what it can unlock for you. And that helped me. That helped motivate me. But I paid a price for thinking that way when I took the test, because then I got really nervous because I blew it up so big in order to motivate me. But that's my answer to you. This is not just a test. This test can unlock opportunities that'll change your life forever. When you want to study and you may not like math problems or verbal problems, I know you would love if your family is taken care of, you have a solid job, and you guys get to live a very nice, smooth life, and you're working in a job that you enjoy and learning from the top institutions in the world. You get one life, and we're all going to unfortunately pass one day. We're going to be gone. There will be a whole new group of people. You get one shot to really make your mark. This test is a step that you have to take if you want to take that MBA route and get that career. And you need to make sure you make that step. And if you don't, life is nasty. It doesn't happen for you. It does not happen for you. You will not go to that school.
Damn, man. That is incredibly well thought out and grounded,
Thank
to
you.
say the least. I can't think of a better motivating factor, and to say it as plainly as you did, as straightforward as you did, couldn't have done it better. Somebody's asking about your LinkedIn profile. Not sure if you're comfortable giving out any personal information. If
Yeah,
you are,
more than happy. I'll give out everything.
awesome. So once this video concludes, feel free to put your LinkedIn profile in the comment section,
Okay.
or send it to me on GMAT Club, and I can post it as well. And we'll make sure that anyone who wants to connect with you can connect with you, or you can do it right now, or I can.
I think I just put it.
Yep. Wait, did you private message me, or did you send?
I think I accidentally private messaged you. It's just Frank Catania.
Yep. All right, got it. Here, I'll can I type out here? I don't know if I can type out here. Let's see if I can. But let's take a peek. I don't know if my camera's on. I don't know if
it's yeah. So you can put it in there. I could send it to you. You could put it
Well, there we go. So I just posted it. So that's your full name. He's given you the option to reach out, so please do so. This has truly been one of our more spectacular interviews that we've had. Somebody asked, how were you able, they said that you seemed like you were in good shape. How were you able to maintain studying, working out, and your life all at the same time?
Another good question. I did not maintain a boisterous social life, a very exciting social life. I had sacrificed that. I will be honest. There are relationships that I did lose, friends that I could have, relationships I know I could have, that went through some turbulence, and that if I was there, I think I could have definitely saved it more. I had, unfortunately, had to make sacrifices along that line, and I kept in shape. I still lifted, but I had sacrificed even my body at some point because I was lifting since I was 16. I competed competitive. I was a competitive. I was a competitive bodybuilder, and I went to nationals. I placed second in the country for men's physique in 2019 or 2018 in Pittsburgh. I went to nationals and placed second, and I won in the state of New Jersey. So it was pretty.
Was it bodybuilding or powerlifting?
Bodybuilding. So it was men's physique. It was all just kind of appearance-wise and physique-wise. And yeah, I had sacrificed that extreme physical build for this test. I could not because I was so motivated in that area to lift like that. And unfortunately, I had let that go. And I'm still trying to get back to that level I was at body-wise. I even suffered an injury. I'm still trying to get back to that level because I had sacrificed that for the GMAT. I let that go.
What do you bench, bro?
I tore my chest. I was benching a little above 400 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
No more of these people on here. No
I
one should
wait.
be benching. No, nobody should be benching more than me on these broadcasts. This is my broadcast.
What, you no one should be benching 400 pounds. Clearly, I tore my chest, unfortunately. So
I'm only at 3.25. So like, I'm tired of these. Tired of people coming on here with
Evan, that's big weight. That's big weight.
I never competed in like a national competition like you did. So I'm I'm getting sick of people just being just insanely better.
Evan, you're fantastic. You know, all the help you give everybody on this forum. We all owe you. Everybody in here owes you.
Oh boy. Well, I appreciate that. So Allison, I want to call her out. She said, basically shout out to your girlfriend, who, as we've discussed, was a big support.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Thanks for sharing your experience. What would be your best advice for someone that has an exam in less than 24 hours?
Looks like the gentleman's name is Bilal. Bilal, my advice to you would be you've already done your work. Your score's already plugged in. Your knowledge is there. You just need to go in there and remain calm. It's not the end of the world. If you take this test, because I know if you don't get this, you don't go to that school, but there will always be routes. I guarantee you someone's life goal is not to get a 730 on the GMAT. It's just no one's life goal, right? Like, it's, of course, amazing goal to have, but that's not, you do it to get to an MBA and to get to the next route. No matter what happens, it's not going to be the end of the world. You will always have different routes. As long as you know you tried your best, you put your best foot forward, you did everything you could, you're going to be okay no matter what pops up tomorrow. I don't care if it's a 450, a 530, a 550. If you put a 650 or 700, if you put your best foot forward, you should be proud of yourself tomorrow, and you could always take it again. So my best advice right now, stay calm, make sure you have a full stomach going into the test, and it's not the end of the world. No matter what happens, you have another shot.
If I can add on to that just a little bit, make sure you get a full night's rest. Try and sleep well. Go to bed early. Keep yourself relaxed. Watch a funny movie if you like those. And as Frank said, I mean, he listened to soothing music to keep himself sort of in line. Now, if you need to listen to like heavy metal to get yourself jacked up, I mean, do it. But do what makes you most comfortable in these moments.
Yeah. Do what makes you most comfortable. And again, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You could take it again. Look at me. I got a 730 and my freaking AWA. Like, I have to take it again. It's a nightmare for me. It's like, are you kidding me? But I just got these.
Again, all the pressure's off.
Here. I just got these two. Oh, I'm so happy. I've never seen these questions. It's amazing. It's like such a gift.
Those questions will be on GMAT Club shortly, I promise. Somebody asked, how are GMAT Club tests? The quant section is harder than the actual exam. To
say the least. To say the least. You guys.
Bunel helps write a lot of those. So when someone or something like Bunel is attached to a test, it's going to be impossible. Quant section is great. Highly recommend it. Stay away from the verbal. It's garbage. It's not representative. We are working on it. But for anyone who says, oh, you guys just pump your own tires, no. We're realistic here. Our cats, when it comes to verbal, is garbage. It's a mess. Don't use them. Quant do use though.
Yeah, your quant creates soldiers. That you guys create beasts.
Well, tell that to Bunel. Here's a question from a guy named Tim. How do you get the courage to go and essentially reattempt? I scored so bad that I've developed the fear to give the test again. I just panic and can't stop thinking of the limited time I have available to me.
This is my advice. It's okay. I want you to tell you that score is not a representation of who you are. I spent a very long time thinking that 650 when I studied for 700 was who I was, and I was that kid from high school. It is not your fault what happened in that test room. All it takes is one time. All it takes is a few problems to mess you up, and you will get a terrible grade. Whatever that test grade is, I guarantee you is not representation of who you are. If you did better on your practice tests, those are a representation of your performance. So if you went in there and had messed up terribly and you feel you can't hop back into it, that time is gone. That's in the past. And guess what? If that's the first time you took it and you go take it again and the same thing happens, that's okay because you have 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. So you need to, and of course, obviously, you don't want to take it 8 times. No one does, but you just have to really keep your head up and just know that I would choose a different testing center, stay calm. When I saw that first question on my test, I got very scared. I got very scared, and I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be like last time. I've done this problem a million times. How am I not getting this done?" You have to be resilient. You cannot give up during the test. You cannot decide and pack it in if you get a problem wrong or you think you made a stupid mistake. You have to keep going the whole time. Every single question has to be your best effort. So go take the test. Get back in there and go take it. Please do it for me at least.
Yes, do it for Frank, because I gotta say, listening to all these comments, I'm prepared to run through a wall. Hey, dude, how many years of football did you play where you were motivating people?
Oh, I played probably about 10 years. I played.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Did
About
you
10
play in
years.
college or just through high school?
So I was actually too skinny and too small to play. I went to a place called Don Bosco Prep, which is a pretty decent high school football team. And I was too small. I weighed, 120 pounds at the time and saw my sophomore year, and these kids were weighing. But my junior year, I had gained 80 pounds.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah, and then I switched over because I had to go to LA because I got into acting for a bit. I was in a movie, and I had never went. Never went back to.
Stop. What movie?
It's called The World Away. It's an independent film. It's with you'll probably recognize some of the people in there, but it was my quick stint in acting. Yeah.
Jesus. Dude, I don't use this term often, although Selby, who is one of my moderators, will say they use this term too often. Selby, wrong. Um, dude, you're like the perfect human being, at least from a male perspective. Like, Jesus Christ.
No, thanks. It may seem that way, Evan, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of insecurities and a lot of pain that goes into that performance. It may look that way, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into that performance and a lot of doubt. But at the end of the day, the work puts me on top more often than not.
Well, let's read some of the fan mail. It shows on his face. He's handsome.
Thanks.
That's from Brenda. From Marek, Frank clearly thinks deeply before and while responding. Years of prep are obvious in the way he speaks and reasons. Great interview.
Marek, thank you. The GMAT has improved other areas of my life in the way I speak, the way I think, the way I look at arguments. So thanks for saying that. Someone asked me, what was your score split? I scored a 45 on my verbal, a 45V and a 47Q, which I thought would have been a 750, but apparently this day and age, it's a 730. So
happens. One from Brenda again. I believe it's a she. I apologize if I mislabel you. I'm on my phone here, and the pictures are like microscopic. How did Frank improve his timing on quant? Any specific tips? I mean, it sounded like you had a pretty good handle on quant because of your background, but also because of MGMAT.
yeah.
I mean, so how were you building yourself up?
Quant to start was my weakest area. I could barely do it. Actually, to start was my weakest area. I could barely do a practice problem. I think my first quant score on a MGMAT was like in the 20s. It was abysmal. That quant is what literally would make me want to cry. First thing came, I had to get the fundamentals down, never worried about timing. I'd spend 10 minutes on the same problem when I first started studying. I would spend 10 minutes. I'd be excited if I got it right. But as time went on, you have to start at one point timing yourself. So I would do problem test. I would go in the official guide. I'd go, all right, problem 175 to 180. I'm going to time myself, stopwatch, go. And I'd run through them. And other times I would do a stopwatch, but other times I would do a timer. So it would count down instead. And I would have to skip problems sometimes. And again, don't get frustrated if you miss easy problems. I scored a 730 on my GMAT. There are times I go through this verbal guide here and my quantitative guide, and rarely, but I'll get a problem wrong, and I'll see it's got an 85% correct on or 80% correct on the quant section, and I'll go and I'll be, oh my gosh, and so frustrating. But verbal, not really. That doesn't happen.
Very fair. All right. By the way, Gabrielle says apparently you don't do the dishes. I can't imagine this is Alexa, but no, do we want to dispel this slanderous statement?
Yeah, it's dispelled. I mean, this is my sister. She's got very high expectations. She's my roommate. And
Oh, I didn't even see the last name.
yeah,
That didn't click. Gabrielle, oh, thank you for joining us. Frank is a terrific guy. If you want to hop next door and join him on the live stream, be more than happy to accommodate that.
yeah,
Um, two questions to wrap up, and then we can say goodbye because I know football's starting in about 20 minutes, and
yes.
I'm all jazzed up for the Patriots who are gonna probably kill the Titans today.
Are you a
So
Patriots fan?
die hard.
I'm a diehard Patriots fan.
I love it.
I'm a
I knew
massive
it.
Patriots fan.
Well, but did you grow up in the Massachusetts area or New
No,
England area?
no, no. I'm a Jersey guy, but I'm
Right.
very like patriotic. I love red, white, and blue, and very big fan of the whole entire. So when I was young, I kind of adopted the Patriots' attitude towards their lack of a better word,
I don't know if you could.
patriotism.
I don't know if you can tell. Like one of these banners, like this middle one, is an old school retro Pats
Oh,
banner.
nice. I was wondering what that was. I saw the helmet.
So Red Sox, old school Pats banner, and then something from like something about the Mayflower. I don't really know, but
Yeah.
I think it's there. But yeah, oh, I love it. One, how were you able to move beyond questions when you knew you had to skip them because the timing was up and you just knew this wasn't going to click? How were you able to mentally cope with that? But then, and also, how did you know that it was the right time to move on?
So I
Or
would
did you ever?
say no, no. I mean, I would definitely say there were problems that I looked at on that test. The math, the quant section on my most recent test, there just wasn't many that really tripped me up. But there was one that I just looked at. It was I do not know circular coordinate geometry. So anything dealing with I can do the simple stuff, but it had something to do with a parabola. It might have been like a what's it called? What do they call those problems? Experimental.
Okay, yep.
So I immediately was able to tell I cannot do this problem. I just had a solid streak of doing correct problems. I need to move on. So that's a sense there. But also, I would say first 30 seconds, think about your approach. You have to start working, have to max 30 seconds. And after the 30 seconds, I would start debating on whether you have to start saying, is this approach accurate? Is there any quicker way to do this? You have to really start thinking about so many things. So, yeah, that's what I would say. If you know how to do the problem, really try to get it done. You never want to skip a problem or have to get a problem wrong that you know how to do. Like the first problem that I did, I knew how to do it. I just didn't have the time to, when it clicked, on how to do it. You really don't want to do that. So make sure that you if you know how to do the problem, get it right. If you don't, try to start canceling out problems in the first minute. If you can't get it after a minute, move on. Trust me, I'd much rather you get the easier problems right that come after when you get that one wrong than spending all the time on that and then you'll get destroyed. Your mistakes on the GMAT compound.
They absolutely do. By the way, Mohammed, for you asking if we should use LSAT materials, yes, I'd highly recommend you use
Yes.
RC and CR.
Yes.
1,000%. They're more difficult. They're amazingly high quality. Use them. GMAT Ninja backs me on this. So,
Yeah.
King of
Definitely.
Kings.
May Young Singh, 730 with Q41, V38. Solid score. Solid score. Dimitri said, I'm in the same boat as Frank, 667. Great job, Dimitri. Congratulations, man.
I have
Great
to imagine
job.
this is Alexa.
Yep, that's Alexa. There she is.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Good for you, buddy. Alexa,
Thanks.
pleasure to have you on here. Next time we have Frank on here, we'll bring you, we'll bring the sister on. We will make this a truly holistic event. But Frank, I have one more question for you, which is about the future. And by that I mean what schools you're looking to apply to. When are you going to apply? Walk me through what you're thinking on that front.
Yeah. So, of course, ideally, I'd like to look at the UPenn, Harvard, top places with the 730 GMAT lands, right, and my GPA from undergrad is about 3.85 and my major GPA is a 4.0. So
Jesus.
I think I have a good foundation to apply to these schools with the 730, and I'm hoping to at least get into one. But I also have to look at my career route, which is investment banking. I love valuation. I love finance. That's the route I want to go I want to be at a top investment bank as an investment banker in a division that I'm passionate about, working on mergers and acquisitions and areas that are going to change the world. So although I'd love to, Harvard's fantastic for that, of course, but you have to really start looking at the best investment banking programs. So,
Wharton.
yeah, Wharton's, of course, up there. Harvard, of course, is up there. I don't know if I could ever get into a Harvard at Can turn, but I really do like Cornell.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like Cornell a lot because they have a great feeder program for investment banks, specifically investment bankers. Columbia is another great investment banking school.
Yeah, CBS.
Yeah, CBS is great. So I'll definitely be applying to UPenn, Harvard, Columbia, Cornell, and this is in no order. Harvard, Cornell, London Business School of Economics, Carnegie Mellon, I like a lot.
Tepper.
And yeah, Tepper. And yeah, I'm trying to think. There's probably some other places. I'm just Dartmouth and Yale. Dartmouth and Yale because
Okay.
I like New Haven.
So I was about to say, no, this is non-committal, obviously, and there are students who come in here and say, "Well, MIT is my number one choice," and then it's on video, and then they apply to schools, and the schools may or may not see it and say, "Well, hang on, you said this is your number one choice. What are you telling us we're your number one?"
Of course, I right now I'm still in the very early stages, right? Because I only have 1 year of work experience under my belt, so I mean, yeah, anybody who sees this, it's really just I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out what's going to be best for me so far. But I mean, these schools are so prestigious and amazing the way they run their educational programs. It's like I would be fortunate to really be accepted to any of those that I mentioned.
And that's a mindset mentality I think you have to have as a student. It doesn't matter what score you get. You have to feel fortunate and lucky that one of these amazing schools, again, Ross, Michigan, Darden, UVA, Stern, NYU, name it, are willing to accept you into their program. Their halls have seen students become billionaires. They've seen some of the most influential and incredible people in the world. You cannot be cocky. You can't be arrogant. You need to accept the fact that, much like taking the test as a gift, getting into a program is a gift.
Oh, it's such a gift. And that's another schools I like to mention. NYU for investment banking. I mean, that place is just, but honestly, probably one of the best for NYU investment banking. And then Darden School is amazing. I would go to, like, I'm going to put my best foot forward, really. And if I was lucky enough to get into multiple, it would be such a hard decision. But I would go to really, if I got into any of these, top programs, I mean, I'd be so fortunate just to even get into one. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's a mindset you need. Any program, I say this without remorse or hesitation, any program would be lucky to have you on their campus.
Oh, thank you, Evan. It means a lot to me.
I've interviewed a lot of people. I've spoken with a lot of people. Just anecdotally, and I gotta say, you've left a mark. They will be sincerely and incredibly lucky to have you there.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate that. That means a lot. That you just made my day.
Oh, I appreciate that. Folks, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you
so much
to Alexa, to Frank, your sister, whose name I cannot remember because it
Gabby.
was Gabby. That's right, Gabrielle, maybe. And to you as well. This was a fantastic video. I know people who watch this a couple months from now, maybe even a couple years from now, are going to get a huge boost of motivation from listening to you. So from GMAT Club, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on to hear about how things have progressed in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want anyone watching this now or 5 years from now, believe in yourself. You can do this. You have it in the bag. Just you have to believe in your work ethic and make sure you're structured in the way you approach things. It's just a test. It's just a test. It's all about you and the way you go into that this experience and the type of mindset that you hold going to the experience. So good luck.
Wonderful. Shoot, you know what? Brenda asked one more question, and she said, "Please." I can't say no to somebody who says
no,
please.
Of course.
She wants to know how you were justifying your hiatus from work to study. But I don't think you did take a hiatus.
So I did take a hiatus, not aggressively, not like GMAT was always in my life. I never stopped really studying. But Brenda, my final piece of advice to you would just be to you have to make sure you never let the GMAT go until you actually finally take it. You have to do multiple problems a day, even if it takes you 20 minutes. There is no hiatus because you've learned so much already, I'm sure. Don't take a break. Keep going to the end.
And there we have it, folks. Thank you for joining us.
take a hiatus, but don't take a complete break.
Fair enough. From the master himself, at least as Doug would like to call him. Folks, please join us again. We're going to do these often. I look forward to seeing all of you during the spotlight. I'll be moderating quite a few of them, so please give a shout if you see me. But take care, folks, and happy
Thanks for watching. Thanks, Evan. Bye.